Oh, there do I see my father. Oh, there do they call to me. 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 Oh, there do they call to me.
When I first beat God of War in 2018, I had mixed feelings about the experience. While I hailed the game in some regards as a masterpiece, I felt something empty inside of me as I cleared the credit screen. Something that felt like a long-lost dream of what could have been. It wasn't until I started recording the gameplay footage for this review that I learned where that emptiness came from. Hello, my name is Jacob, reviewing for the Midgardian. Join me and let us break down the elements of God of War that make it the most imperfect masterpiece of the previous generation. This review will of course contain spoilers for God of War. I was never an avid player of the original God of War games. However, this series does a great job of easing you into the story of Kratos and his son Atreus. Right from the beginning, you enter the game off the title screen itself. In one smooth transition, you go from new game to chopping down a tree as Kratos. Within the opening act, it is near impossible not to be moved by the human interactions of Kratos and his son as they say goodbye to their mother/wife. We as a gamer are given very little information on her life or death. Only the vacuum that now exists between the father and the son in her absence. Like most games, the opening act fills as a tutorial sequence to teach you the gameplay mechanics. The mastery of this opening act has the ability to win or lose your audience, especially if they're more seasoned gamers. And the way you do this within this game and story absolutely nails it. This example of tucking the tutorial within an opening hunt sequence with Kratos and Atreus is brilliant. What's even more brilliant is the hidden plot behind this simple hunt. By the time the pair return to their home, you are delivered a very simple objective. Carry the mother's ashes to the top of the mountain. And then knock knock, the story changes. The main protagonist is delivered within the first hour, and you are given a really good reason to hate him. He trespasses on your land, destroys your property, and threatens your family. The ensuing fight is really one to get your blood pumping. While later you learn this god's identity, it is hard to deduce right away. He's a small man covered in tattoos. To anyone with any amount of knowledge of Norse mythology, you would quickly realize who this character was by the simple fact that they cannot feel anything, specifically pain. This explosive opening is a great blueprint for what's to come in the game. Your task is simple: get to the mountain. The problem being that every being and creature in the 9 realms wants to ask for your help or stop you from reaching the literal climax. The delivery quest provides a surprisingly solid foundation for the absolute insanity that happens between the pages. From meeting gods, dwarves, giants, and elves to visiting 6 of the 9 realms, Kratos and Atreus have a true adventure both of the world but also of themselves. At first, Kratos struggles with his new role as a single dad, and the subtleness of this is shown in a few brief but powerful scenes. You will see him struggle with his cold heart, fight with an angry son, and ultimately grow as a character himself. Considering Kratos used to simply exist as a vessel for vengeance and bloodshed, seeing him struggle as a father on a mission to bring peace to his wife is an amazing thing to watch unfold. Like I said in the opening, the premise of the story is masterpiece material. The story barely misses a beat, unless you, as a player, gets in the way. We have now entered what I know left me feeling the most hollow from my 2 run-throughs of God of War: the gameplay. While the combat system was reworked from the original trilogy on the PS2, there are certain elements I wish the gameplay as a whole would have left behind. Much like the story, the combat does mature as you play through the game. Starting as a simple button masher, you are given an axe and told to go smash things, and this feels great. However, upon my second playthrough, the opening act feels like they hold you back too much. Kratos may be old, but he was also killed near the entirety of the Greek pantheon, and you're telling me he cannot muster anything past a few R1, R1, R2 combos. While I understand progression is important, I couldn't help but feel it is a little stiff for the first few hours of the game, especially on a second playthrough. That being said, the progression is rewarding. The skill tree is not large, but it is kept at arm's reach, and the effects of each skill are well noticed. Outside of the skill tree, the game itself rewards the player with a new toy to play with every major story milestone. What once started as an axe-smashing brute, Kratos eventually turns into an axe-smashing, arrow-slinging, magic-wielding, blade-spinning, sprinting, fire-fisted, shield-smacking brute. What I do appreciate about the progression is the difficulty of the game. Well, yes, there are 4 different levels of difficulty. The true difficulty comes from how you play the game. You can play this game with a very basic playstyle. However, to beat higher level and late game enemies, you will need to use every item on Kratos' belt. This game also adds a simple loot system that, compared to other RPGs, feels like child's play. With no random loot, the items you receive are manicured to be found by the exploring player. While yes, this game is open world, it does still feel quite linear in the exploration system. As with the combat, you can play the entire game without exploring anything. It will lead you to having a lack of items, money, and leave you out on some of the lore. But the question becomes, is that a bad thing? The rewards for the exploration and problem-solving mechanics feel half-baked, and really kind of a chore. By the 10th time I completed a puzzle to receive a simple bag of hack silver as reward, I was pretty fed up with the exploration. I found myself just focusing on the combat and story progression because I found them much more rewarding and, quite frankly, more fun. The puzzles presented to the player range from repetitive to annoying tasks. There are only a handful of times that I felt good for completing a puzzle. While some puzzles block story sections from being completed, the majority of these can be avoided. Not only did I find myself avoiding these puzzles for the rewards, but quite simply because the story demanded my attention. The camera is tight. It follows just over Kratos' shoulder, and each plot point begs you to follow through with it. To turn my camera behind me to look for the next cave or forgotten body felt like an insult to this masterpiece of a story.
Heavily!
Look!
It's alright.
Is he friendly?
While the main character is Kratos, you do control his actions. The tight camera angle makes you as the player feel more like an observer to the story rather than a true participant. The crowning achievement of this game is the fact that the entire game is one seamless cut. There are no loading screens, cutscenes, or fade to blacks from the moment you hit play till the time the credits roll. 40% of the developing team thought this task was going to be impossible to achieve, as it had not been done in a game of this size before. So to the masterminds that made this work, I salute you because it works wonderfully. In my hours of playing this game, I had no glitches, frame rate dips, or lag spikes, and an over 30-hour experience, and this was true in 2018 as well. When you factor in some of the amazing set pieces you witness on your journey across the realms, it is hard to fathom the scale of what is happening behind the scenes to keep this game running smooth. Those amazing set pieces are one of the stars of this game. Your eyes will be bombarded with dense forest, ice-cold water, and brilliant colors across the various landscapes featured in this game. The majority of this game does take place in tightly packed corridors, but there are more than a few sections that allow Kratos and Atreus to explore on their own. I remember when I first heard about this game that the players were blown away by the amount of detail on Kratos, specifically his beard, and boy, they were not wrong. Kratos obviously was painstakingly designed. From every beard hair and rippling muscle, very few times in video game history has a character felt more alive. Other main characters are given a lot of time and detail as well. However, it is clear that corners were cut in the copy-paste enemy design. Draugr, Dark Elves, Trolls, and other such nasties rarely get a color change to tell them apart from one another. But that won't matter too much as you hack and slash your way through hundreds of foes. This game was composed by Bear McCreary, a name behind great scores such as Outlander, Black Sails, and Battlestar Galactica. While combat music will feel like any other game, the music chosen for specific story sections are truly moving. They capture perfectly the setting, the tone, and the maturity of the unfolding story. Video game music has come a long way since its 16-bit days, and is no more clear in this masterpiece of a score.
The axe did not return.
now to the reason why this review exists nearly 3 years after this game's release. Let us talk about the mythology. God of War, much like previous entries, creates its own mythology around pre-existing stories and figures. It then puts Kratos in the hands of the player and asks you to murder everything in your sight. While the story has matured, the nature of God of War has not changed. You are here to kill everything with the word Norse in front of it, including the Norse gods. That's what makes this section of the review so hard. While yes, this game is based on Norse mythology, it clearly takes creative license on a lot of elements. Here are a list of a few. Atreus is Loki, making Kratos the father of Loki. Freya is the mother of Balder, therefore Frigg does not exist. There are dark elves and dwarves. Hel and Jormungandr are not the children of Loki. Tyr is dead, Balder is crazy, and Odin is a jerk. Oh wait, that's kind of the same. As far as I can tell, there was no mythology consultant, or at least not one of importance, and it's clear that much of this research was done on the surface level. The runes, for example, are all over the place. Sometimes they spell things in English, other times in Elvish, Old Norse, Swedish. Honestly, I lost track of all the different words that came up from the runic spellings. It also appears that the meanings of the individual runes were not taken into effect at all. They are also everywhere. It seems like not a thing in this universe exists that didn't have runes etched into them. When first tasked with reviewing this game for the Midgardian, I chuckled at the thought of how badly the mythology was represented when I played this in 2018. But I also made myself remember what other games existed this time that represented Norse mythology. And it's a very short list, and a very short list of some that do it well, let alone this being a AAA game. So with that, I entered this game with an open mind, and I must say, I respect it a lot more than I thought I would. For every misstep this game has with the mythology, it also does some things amazingly well. The biggest moment to me is the depiction of several of the characters, most notably the world serpent. Jormungandr is a sight to be seen, and I do not believe a more perfect depiction can ever be made. The amount of detail poured into his design is incredible. Even the voice and language is amazing to witness on a big screen. Until playing God of War, I never had a good image of what the world serpent would look like, and now I do. Moments like this are not as rare as I remembered. While yes, the Freya and Frigg debate will rage till Ragnarok itself, the wife of Odin is well shown as a powerful witch and a cunning warrior. Dwarves, Brock, and Sindri serve as your merchants/blacksmiths through the story and are always entertaining to watch. Along your journey, you will be treated to many of the realms. Some of them mean smaller set pieces than others. And once again, this is part of the mythology that I feel disconnected to. When in Midgard, you see fjords and snow-capped mountains that make you feel like you're living the mythology. But certain realms such as Alfheim feel incredibly different from the Norse myth. The depictions of light elves and dark elves I found incredibly hard to stomach, as they were so vastly different from other depictions out there. I felt like I was in a completely different mythology and universe as I fought these bug people who were killing these hooded blue people. I found myself rejoicing when I returned to the realm of Midgard, as the other realms made me feel so distant from the Norse myth that kept me interested in this game. By the time the credits rolled on my second playthrough of God of War, I was surprised by how positive I felt about the mythology that was presented. Some of the depictions were in my mind perfect, while other elements such as the runes and depictions of the 9 realms made me feel hollow once again. For every masterclass moment featured in this game, I felt something holding them from a perfect experience. The presentation and story of this game were and still are true marvels of video game design, and deserve a reward of their own for what they have done. It's too bad that these moments of perfection are held back by gameplay conventions of 30 years ago. There are very few masterpieces in the gaming world, and God of War was so close to being one of those. For that reason, I'm left giving this game a 4.5 out of 5. As this is a Midgardian review, I'm left with a decision of what to score the mythology aspects. There's no moving past that this game has intentions of killing many of the gods we treasure in these stories and the religion around them. I'm struggling to give it more than the lowest score possible. However, the few things that this game does well in the mythology department, it does really well. Depictions of Jormungandr, Brock and Sindri, Mimir, and the monsters you fight are enough for me to give this game a 2 out of 5. Thank you for joining me for my review of God of War for the Midgardian. Next month, I'll be reviewing Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice. So be sure to follow the Midgardian on YouTube, Instagram, and on the website to stay up to date.